Nestled within the serene Finnish landscape, Lake Bodom lies like a shimmering jewel, its placid waters perfectly mirroring the endless expanse of the sky above. Dense, towering forests surround it, and for years, the whispers of nature were the only sounds that punctuated its stillness. It was the summer of 1960, unusually warm for Finland. The long, sun-drenched days enticed many to venture outdoors, and the lake became a favorite spot for families, friends, and lovers. Among them were 4 teenagers, 2 young couples, all filled with excitement for the adventure ahead. They were Seppo Boisman and his girlfriend Tuulikki Mäki, along with Nils Gustafsson and his girlfriend Irmeli Björklund. Friends who had come to Lake Bodom to camp by its waters and enjoy a night beneath the stars. It was supposed to be a night of fun, just 4 teenagers escaping into the wilderness, away from the worries of the world. They pitched their tent near the edge of the lake, where the forest's thick canopy provided shade and the gentle breeze carried the scent of pine. The moon hung high that night, casting its silvery light on the lake, while the crackling of the campfire filled the air alongside their laughter. But as midnight approached, a strange stillness crept in, a silence that seemed to blanket the forest, muffling even the sounds of the water lapping gently at the shore. Around 4 a.m., the attack began. The assailant, armed with a knife and a blunt object, approached silently. The first strike was swift and brutal, targeted at Nils Gustafsson, catching him off guard. Before he could fully comprehend what was happening, in the pitch-black night, Mila was singled out as the fury of the assailant seemed to focus on her. She bore the brunt of the attack, her body showing far more savage wounds than the others. It was as if the killer harbored a personal hatred towards her. The rampage continued, but it was over in mere moments. The killer, after leaving the teenagers in a bloody, lifeless heap, disappeared into the forest as silently as they had come. On that fateful morning, a local man stumbled upon the horrific scene around 11 a.m. at Lake Bodom. The collapsed tent revealed a nightmarish tableau, with remnants of the 4 campers tangled within the fabric. Stray tufts of hair, teeth, and other human debris littered the area, hinting at the brutal violence that had unfolded. Seppo, the first victim discovered, lay partially under the canvas, his body marked by 2 puncture wounds to his throat and 1 to his chest. His head had been crushed beyond recognition, a grim testament to the violence he endured. Tuuli was found in a fetal position, partially atop Seppo. She had been struck twice in the head with a blunt object, likely resulting in immediate incapacitation. A towel had been gently placed over her head and torso, a macabre detail in an otherwise chaotic scene. Remarkably, she had survived for approximately 2 to 3 hours after the attack, trapped beneath her friends' bodies. Irmeli, lying partly on top of Tuuli, bore the marks of a violent struggle. She had suffered at least 3 severe blows to her forehead and cranium while still inside the tent. After her initial attack, she was dragged outside, where the brutality continued. Post-mortem, she had been stabbed 15 times in the neck and back. Her light green jeans were half pulled off, and her blouse had been raised above her shoulders, adding to the horrific nature of her death. Nels, the sole survivor, was found atop the pile, his face swarming with flies. He suffered a broken temple and jaw, indicating a fierce blow to the head. The force of the strike had been so great that cerebral fluid leaked from his nose. Additionally, his cheek was pierced so deeply by a blade that his teeth were visible through the skin. Given more time, he likely would not have survived. Defensive wounds marked the arms and hands of all 4 campers, suggesting that they had fought back against their attacker, desperate to escape the horror that unfolded in their tent. A crumpled diary belonging to Irmeli was found amidst the chaos, containing haunting lines. Seppo and Niels are drunk, awake at 2 a.m., Seppo's in the woods. Outside the tent, investigators discovered a muddy pillowcase, tied with an elastic band, that didn't belong to any of the campers. Additionally, several items were notably absent. Seppo's leather jacket, all 4 wallets and IDs, and Nils's slip-on loafers. Search efforts led by dog teams, metal detectorists, and divers only yielded Nils's shoes, found 500 meters away, hidden beneath a rock. Blood splatter marked the exterior of the shoes, raising questions about the killer's actions. Witnesses reported seeing a 20 to 30-year-old man with light brown slicked back hair fleeing south through the forest around 6 a.m., moving away from the tent. The two birdwatchers who spotted him noticed the collapsed tent, but chose not to investigate further. Later, a fisherman described seeing the same man, approximately 5'8", passing along the shoreline. With no other leads, investigators brought Nels back to Lake Bodom, hoping to retrieve repressed memories. When that failed, they turned to hypnotherapy. Under the guidance of Dr. Stenberg, Nels recalled a man with flowing blonde hair, big eyes, and distinctive facial features. A composite sketch was created from his description. Though hypnosis is not the most reliable forensic technique, a fisherman confirmed that the sketch resembled the man he had seen. In the wake of the brutal murders at Lake Bodom, the investigation spiraled into a complex web of suspects, each entwined in a narrative of intrigue and darkness. Hans Assmann was a 36-year-old German workman who had lived in Finland for a decade. On June 7, 1960, he was admitted to a hospital in Helsinki, ostensibly suffering from stomach pain. His arrival was anything but ordinary. He appeared to be feigning unconsciousness, his eyes squeezed shut as if to conceal something. A doctor employed a rather unconventional method, tickling, to determine his state, prompting Hans to wake up immediately. Upon further examination, nurses noted his filthy fingernails and clothes stained with mysterious red marks, suggesting he had been running through a forest. Hans was not an unknown figure. He had previously been linked to the unsolved murder of Kiliki Sari, a 17-year-old girl whose body was found in a bog after she vanished while riding her bike. His vehicle matched the description of one seen at the crime scene, but he had never been convicted for that crime. Additionally, Hans lived with his wife on a property just several kilometers from where the campers were killed, placing him in close proximity to the scene. At the same time police began questioning Hans, Nils Gustafsson was undergoing hypnotherapy, hoping to unlock repressed memories of the night of the attack. Hypnotherapy was a controversial practice in 1960, often yielding as many false memories as accurate ones. However, in this case, it provided a glimpse into the chaos that had unfolded. During the session, Nils recalled hearing screams and witnessing a man entering the tent wielding a knife and what appeared to be a lead pipe. His description of the assailant, a man with flowing blonde hair and large eyes, closely resembled Hans's appearance. Soon after, Hans cut his hair short, seemingly in response to the sketch based on Nils's recollection. Despite the circumstantial evidence against him, Hans had a solid alibi. He was having an affair that night, and was confirmed to be with his mistress, who substantiated his story. As police efforts shifted to other local suspects with criminal records, Arne Loco and Eske Longa, the investigation continued to falter without concrete leads. Then there was Kalle Bergström, known as the Kiosk Man. Kalle operated a food and drink kiosk just 800 meters from the campsite, known for his hostility towards campers and cyclists alike. He had a history of violent outbursts, and witnesses reported seeing a man resembling him near the area on the night of the murders. Yet after a brief search of his home, police cleared him of any wrongdoing. With Hans's alibi and a lack of additional evidence, the case grew cold, slipping into obscurity like the long Finnish winter. Nearly 44 years after his friends had been butchered, that Nils received an unsettling knock at his front door. Standing there were several police officers, their demeanor grave. They confirmed that there had been a breakthrough in the Lake Bodom case and that he was under arrest. Decades following the incident saw significant advancements in forensic science, particularly with the advent of DNA testing. Investigators had revisited pieces of evidence from that fateful night in June 1960, and what they uncovered suggested a shocking narrative. Nils, the sole survivor, was in reality the perpetrator. Authorities compiled a list of facts that implicated him, and in March 2004, he was charged with taking the lives of his 3 tent mates. Nils was remanded for nearly a year and a half before his trial began on August 4, 2005. The prosecution laid out several new facts, claiming that the shoes found in the woods belonged to Nils and that the blood covering them was that of Thule. Curiously, none of Nils's blood was found, raising questions about who had actually worn his shoes during the brutal attack. Furthermore, they pointed to Nils's claimed memory loss as suspicious, suggesting that while short-term amnesia could occur after a head injury, permanent memory loss was implausible. Amidst this turmoil, several new witnesses emerged. One claimed to have seen Niels arguing with Seppo by the lake on the night of the murders. Another recounted a conversation with Niels years later at a bus stop, where he allegedly confessed to her about the incident. Yet, the most damning was the lead investigator, who during an interrogation supposedly admitted off the record, "What's done is done. I'll get 15 years for it." Now, at 81 years old, Niels is regarded as innocent by most closely following the case. Yet, due to extensive media coverage and sensationalized claims by the prosecution, approximately 50% of Finns still believe he played a role in the murders. This lingering doubt is largely fueled by the misinformation propagated in the media, which claimed that Niels hadn't even been injured during the Lake Bodom attack, a statement proven false by the evidence. To further complicate matters, one crucial piece of evidence remains: the muddy pillowcase found just outside the tent on the morning of June 5th. Blood and male fluid were discovered on it, but the DNA profile in the early 2000s did not match either Seppo or Niels. Though Hans Assmann had long since passed, his son submitted a sample of his DNA to be analyzed, desperate for answers. The results confirmed a negative match. As for Kohli, the kiosk owner, his still living son refuses to submit a sample, perhaps fearing the truth of his father's involvement would emerge. One of the most persistent theories revolves around the notion of a mysterious, unknown assailant lurking in the shadows. Speculations emerged about a drifter, a madman, or perhaps even a serial killer who had chosen Lake Bodom as his playground. Supporters of this theory pointed to the lack of forensic evidence linking Niels Gustafsson to the crime and the bizarre circumstances surrounding the attack. One of the most compelling theories that has emerged over the years centers around Niels Gustafsson, the sole survivor of the brutal attack, and Mila Ermili Björklund, his girlfriend. This theory suggests that the motive behind the attack may not have been random, but instead rooted in personal tension that erupted into violence on that fateful night. As the story goes, tensions between Niels and Mila had been brewing throughout the evening. While the four friends appeared to be enjoying a peaceful camping trip, hidden beneath the surface were signs of strain. Some believe that Niels, who was known to have a temper, may have been drinking heavily that night, and this may have led to an altercation between him and Mila. Niels, perhaps fueled by jealousy or resentment, lost control. The evidence supporting this claim comes from the fact that Mila was the most viciously attacked. Her injuries were far more severe than those of the others, which could indicate a personal vendetta or emotional outburst directed specifically at her. Some investigators speculate that Niels may have attacked Mila in a fit of rage and then, in an effort to cover up his crime, turned on Seppo Boisman and Anja Mäki to eliminate witnesses. Afterward, Niels inflicted injuries on himself to create the appearance that he, too, had been a victim of the same attacker. However, Niels's recollection of the night has always been hazy, claiming that he could not remember the details of the attack. Whether this is due to the trauma he endured or a conscious effort to conceal the truth has remained a point of contention for decades. Though this theory has never been proven, and Niels was eventually acquitted of any involvement in the crime, the possibility that the motive behind the Lake Bodom murders was rooted in a lover's quarrel remains one of the most haunting interpretations of that night's events. Niels Gustafsson, the lone survivor, was once considered the key to unlocking the mystery, but even his memories of that night were fractured, distorted by trauma or something far darker. His acquittal left the question hanging: was he a victim or the culprit? And then there was the man who always seemed to hover just beyond suspicion. His erratic behavior the next morning, his cryptic actions, they begged the question: how closely was he tied to the horrors of Lake Bodom? Could it have been jealousy, a past grudge, or something far more sinister? Whatever the truth may be, the motives, like the lake's dark waters, remain obscured, deep, and unknowable. In the end, we're left with fragments, pieces of a puzzle that refuse to fit together. The truth, if it ever existed, may have slipped through our fingers like sand. The lake still whispers its secrets, but whether we will ever understand them, that remains the final mystery.